Hey, you need to stop shifting the burden of security onto your customers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Ocel, filling in for Tracy Lee for another episode in our series about engineering leadership. Today, I am here with Dr. Joye Purser, the Global Lead in the field of cybersecurity at Veritas Technologies. Dr. Purser, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, listen, we're so excited to be here today to talk to you about leadership in cybersecurity. But to first kind of get us going, can you introduce yourself and kind of your role and how you kind of got into this field?
Sure. I am informally the field CISO at Veritas. Veritas Technologies is a software company that delivers data backup systems, and it has been around for a long time and really is a global leader in the ability to back up and restore data, which has become very important in the world of cybersecurity. And as the field CISO, it's my role to travel globally and talk with customers, other CISOs, about their concerns about all things cybersecurity, and also talk to our salespeople and our engineers to reflect back the voice of the customer and to help them identify what are these top concerns, what are the over-the-horizon threats in the world of cybersecurity. Before that, I was at CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I was a senior executive in U.S. Region 4, which is the southeastern United States, the 8 states that range from Mississippi all the way up to North Carolina, Kentucky, and Florida. And before that, I had roles at the Pentagon for 9 years where I was auditing multi-billion-dollar IT systems. And also I was in the White House at the Office of Management and Budget, where I reviewed the $93 billion Department of Defense research budget request to search for alignment with the national security staff on all manner of research and development technologies for the Defense Department. So I really do have quite a checkered past when it comes to my experiences. And I think that really empowers me to do well in my role in seeing over the horizon threats for Veritas.
That's wonderful. And, some people may know this if they've listened to some of these series that I used to be in government contracting as well. And I find that is something that a lot of people that maybe came up in the Silicon Valley side of tech don't have a lot of exposure to. So I guess for people that haven't had these kind of experiences working kind of in the government side, are there any kind of experiences you've had or impressions that you think people maybe get wrong when they think about what it means to work with or work in the government in the area of technology?
Well, what's interesting is that since there have been so many attacks on the private sector, a lot of Silicon Valley has hoovered up people like me who have defense or military backgrounds because they are under attack and they've got to be able to build up their security. And so I've seen a trend over the past 5 years of tech really muscling up when it comes to security on behalf of their customers, and businesses doing it as well. In terms of the government and industry standpoint, you really have to go to the foundational motivators for each. The government is funded by taxpayer dollars for public missions, right? So the Defense Department is to protect U.S. interests in the security of the United States. For Homeland Security is to protect the homeland from threats. When it comes to industry, of course, the bottom line is about making money. However, the motivation is to deliver a product or a service that's so valuable that it solves a problem for the customer. And it's so important of a problem or an issue that the customer will part with their hard-earned money in order to partner. So that's the way I think of working in the private sector, is really we are problem solvers. And our solution is valuable enough that customers will part with their money to be able to help take part in that solution.
What do you think is motivating sort of this awakening, if you can call it that, in the private sector as far as trying to grab more of this cybersecurity talent? Is it that the threats are so much stronger? Is it that the stakes are so much higher? Or is it just becoming aware of how critical and important and large some of these systems and companies are to just how we live life every day?
The global pandemic resulted in a lot of people working from home, and that presented a huge opportunity for cyber criminals to do bad things. And they earned a lot of money through being paid ransom, and they built more sophisticated and complex teams with specialists. There are specialists in the ransomware world who are, and some of these are like kids who are specialists in the social engineering part of getting into the system through crafting an email that looks so real, that it could be from the CEO. There's an urgency here, so I'm going to click this link. And so I do believe that since the pandemic, and maybe a little bit before, we've seen a turning point in which there have been so many attacks on the private sector. And when it comes to critical infrastructure like the electric grid, water systems, banking and financial services, communication systems, lives could be lost if there's a cyber disruption, right? And so on behalf of the companies themselves and all of their vendors, all of their business partners, they've really had to wake up to what those risks are. I was at CISO when Colonial Pipeline happened, and that really was a turning point in terms of attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure. That's a major fuel pipeline that stretches from Texas all the way up to the mid-Atlantic. And there was panic buying because Colonial chose to shut down the fuel coming through that pipeline in an abundance of caution. But it just goes to show how much things have changed in terms of threat actors attacking private infrastructure and how that continues to evolve.
Tell me a little bit about what it's like working with cybersecurity people on your team. I mean, just like, is there a sense of that? Like, I know, that I have some relatives that work in security space, and I've heard stories of others that they're, colorful people that have to kind of see the world in a different way. So I'm kind of curious if you could let us know a little bit of the unique challenges of building a team of people that are focused on the issue of security.
Sure. Well, first I'll start out by saying that security people never relax on the Friday before a holiday weekend. And here we are, close to the holidays for the year. And, the week of Thanksgiving and the Wednesday afternoon before the Thursday of Thanksgiving is a terrible time for cybersecurity people, because that is very often the time you can count on it that there will be a major attack. And as we've seen, that has come to fruition. Global news outlets have reported on some significant breaches for, a water system, banks, you name it, healthcare, hospitals, ambulances being rerouted because of a hacker. It's crazy.
Oh, no.
So, nearly every sector has been impacted. And so that's one thing, is the discomfort. We talked earlier about having comfort about something, and security people are never comfortable. I had a coworker Teams chat me early in my tenure at Veritas, and he and I are in different time zones, and he chatted me at about 10 or 11 o'clock my time, which was much earlier his time. And he said, by the way, what are your working hours? And I read it back as I was reclining, about to go to sleep. And I said, security people kind of work all the time. We're never off. You never turn it off, because there's always a new threat. There's always news, and you have to stay on top of it, and you have to love it. You have to have passion for the subject area. So that's another thing, is security culture. People are always monitoring what's new. They're always skeptical, and they're problem solvers who don't mind being out of their comfort zone.
Wonderful. Well, we are going to jump right back into this conversation. But before we do that, let's take a brief moment to acknowledge today's sponsor, This.Labs. This.Labs is a development consultancy that is trusted by top industry companies, including Stripe, Xero, Wikimedia, DocuSign, and Twilio. This dot takes a hands-on approach by providing tailored development strategies to help you approach your most pressing challenges with clarity and confidence. Whether it's bridging the gap between business and technology or modernizing legacy systems, you'll find a breadth of experience and knowledge you need. Check out how This Dot Labs can empower your tech journey at thisdot.co. That's THISDOT.co. And of course, thank you to This Dot for giving me the opportunity to have these conversations. And with that, let's jump back in. So, Dr. Purser, just before we were going to that break, we were sort of talking about what it takes to build a team of, what are security individuals and people working in the field like. But I think, you described a situation that can be fast-paced, that is a little irregular, that is high stakes, but yet I'm assuming has to be very rewarding when it's working well. So in a high-functioning team, when they look to that leader, what are some of the elements of leadership that are apparent in someone that is a great security leader?
Well, as you know, leadership requires a lot of skills and strengths. But for security leadership in particular, I will call out 3. 1 is vision, 2 is adaptability, and 3 is emotional intelligence. And I can expound on any of those. I don't know if you have a favorite, Rob.
Well, there's definitely some that stand out to me, but it's okay to start with the top. So with the idea of vision, are we talking here just a vision of how people could, make attacks on a system, or, the ways to be vigilant? Or what does vision mean in this context?
Well, I'll give you an example. So when Veritas hired me to be the field CISO, the leader of cybersecurity for our field, no one had occupied that role before. And I do believe that it's an emerging role that has risen from an industry pain point in which customers have questions about cybersecurity. And they need someone who has gravitas and broad expertise so that they can answer all manner of cybersecurity questions. And so having that vision for what that role would be was mine. And so Veritas certainly had ideas, great ideas of what the role should be. And so I helped to fill in a good bit of that because of my experience in cybersecurity and in field operations, which I had led at the Department of Homeland Security prior. So that vision is really important because oftentimes security people are plowing new roads in the field of security, and they need to have a direction of where they're going, and it needs to be informed about the field itself. So you have to have that vision to be able to bring people along towards your plan, right? And being able to articulate that vision, why it's important to the organization. I think it's really important for leadership, but in particular for the leadership in the world of security.
What is the hardest part of selling that vision in security? Is it that people don't want to put in the effort? Is it that they're afraid of the costs, or they don't trust that it can lead there? Like what is the hardest part in security of selling that vision that you have?
Security is costly. So if it's a business, it's definitely an investment or a cost to the business. You want it to enable the business. And usually that's through risk mitigation, and that costs money. So if you're the chief information security officer for your business, it's always a struggle because there's no perfect security. Even if you spend as much money as you wanted, you'd still not have, an impenetrable attack surface. Mm-hmm. So security has a cost. And so you really have to be able to talk about why the investment is important and how much is enough, frankly.
I suppose that is a challenge, right? Is that a lot of people, even senior leaders, sometimes don't have the right mindset to handle risk. They see it as like either we're completely open to attack or we're completely closed to attack. And it's hard to understand how you took something from, say, very risky to less risky and fully compensate that. They don't feel secure unless they know there's no chance of something happening, right? Like that's got to be a difficult part, is helping other leaders on your team or your organization at large kind of understand that there is differences in gradients of risk.
Well, I told you before that I worked with the military, which is, a very structured, very low tolerance for risk. And that I've also worked with a lot of banking and financial services customers. Very similar, very low risk tolerance, very highly regulated, lots of compliance pressure. If they don't do these audits or these reports, they have to pay big money. So they tend to have a really great risk management program. Risk is such a central term in the world of security because risk is a factor of likelihood and impact. So if you and I had been sitting here 10 years ago and talking about the risk of a global pandemic, which I'm sure plenty of federal agencies globally have, we would say, yes, really high impact. Likelihood? Nah, once 100 years. So we're going to score that pretty low. Well, we all know what's happened. So having these risk management programs means each of the divisions has an annual or even quarterly assessment of what are the top risks. Are they aging IT infrastructure? Is it patch management? Is it training for people? Do we need to move from on-prem to the cloud in terms of the storage of our data? That's expensive. Could it be a workforce where many people are going to retire? And so you're going to have a skills gap that's looming. There can be all kinds of risks. And banking and financial services has a really good program for just talking about those and scoring them. And then at the end of the day, rolling all that up to look for patterns or trends that really do need to be addressed at the highest levels of leadership in those companies.
Wonderful. Well, the second topic that you brought up was adaptability. And you've already sort of introduced to us this idea that you have to be kind of prepared for flexible work hours and anything that could happen. Security is an adversarial endeavor, after all. But what are the principal elements of adaptability that are found in great leaders in the area of security?
Adapting to change, of course, means getting out of your comfort zone. And that's through the acquisition of new skills, new certifications, new experiences, building things that you've not built before, being on teams that you're not familiar with, applying new practices or technologies or techniques that may be unfamiliar. So a year ago, I crammed for the CISP certification exam. You may know that CISP is the gold standard in cybersecurity, and it's Certified Information System Security Professional. And it's a really, really hard exam. Really hard. It's like a 4-hour exam. And I didn't know if I would pass, to be honest with you. I've had lots of security training, but there are some things like cryptography, and there are some specifics that just had to be memorized. There's no way around it. Multiple domains of cybersecurity. And I was really, really out of my comfort zone. But I do that. I go to seminars. I go to a regular seminar on blockchain technology that's near where I live because I really want to be out of that comfort zone and know what I'm not seeing. What am I not experiencing? What are the blind spots here in my knowledge of how the world of technology and security is evolving? It changes so fast. And so being able to adapt to those changes is of critical importance in security leadership.
And I can imagine too that so much of security is this, or of sort of failing of an attack, is that people get beyond your protections, get beyond your facade, and this idea that you might like to feel comfortable. You already said in the security space we don't really like to feel comfortable, but people may feel that, and so getting out of that comfort zone and being used to that kind of prepares you, I suppose, for the situations you might find yourself in where, oh no, somebody got through our processes, or there was this disruption. Letting yourself kind of be used to things being a little bit unsettled is probably a good natural, habit of people that are good leaders in this area.
Yes, and let me just say that we would like to be in our comfort zone. I would prefer to be comfortable, but I know that threat actors in cybersecurity are always going to be just around the corner and doing something new. And the rewards of being able to successfully counter that are totally worth the discomfort.
Let's talk about the last one, which I think people, when they were listening to this, have been waiting for us to get to because it may have been a little counterintuitive. I think emotional intelligence is certainly a quality of all great leaders. But in here, I think you're really calling out why this is uniquely special for leaders in security. So I was curious if you'd kind of explain why emotional intelligence is specifically important for leaders in security.
Yes, I think soft influencing skills are very important in the security community. Is it effective to tell a scary story or to present data? Who is your audience? So even during a meeting, sensing that someone isn't really buying into your idea and being able to be genuinely curious and humble about really digging down to the root cause of the resistance to change. That's emotional intelligence, reading the room, understanding your audience, being able to relate to people. So I think that's so important because security is usually asking for resources, or it's usually demanding that people change, or that they develop an awareness that's different, and it's uncomfortable. And so being able to relate to others means that you've got to have the emotional intelligence or the ability to really observe the other person or the dynamics in the room, or know the audience, because how one would present to the C-suite is really different from the messaging and presentation style and length from the technical teams in engineering or to the customer. So being able to adapt based on effectively reading the room and knowing the audience, relating to a broad spectrum of people is super important, especially for security, because you do find yourself working throughout the organization. You know, you'll be reporting to the leadership, but you'll also be talking with customers and with engineering. So that's an example of why it's important.
And that really resonates with me. That makes a lot of sense because we talked just a couple of minutes ago about this idea of the facade. And I think that a lot of times people like to present outwardly the best image that they can. They want you to think everything is clean, everything is orderly. But behind the scenes, right, no matter what company or our houses or our lives, outside of the view, things are a little messy. Got some dust hiding over here around the corner where you can't see it. And this idea that someone's coming in to inspect what we have and to scrutinize that has to be a very humbling sort of feeling of being like a bit exposed. And so I can see where emotional intelligence is kind of really important to not necessarily put people at ease, but to acknowledge or empathize with the discomfort that this kind of scrutiny would bring with it. And so I love that as a way of being a good leader in this area.
I'll tell you what's even more disconcerting is the notion that organizations, security leaders need to be radically accountable and radically transparent with their teams. And these are not my words. This came from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Multiple federal agencies published guidance in March of 2023 to software makers about, hey, you need to stop shifting the burden of security onto your customers. You need to develop your software in a way that is secure by design, that you have the people and the processes and the technology tools in place to develop your products securely. That requires radical transparency and radical accountability. And so when I was new at my organization, I did some poking around. And so I had to manage new relationships with also, I felt a need to know that our processes were solid, right? That was very important for integrity. That's another key leadership attribute. But yes, it is uncomfortable, but it's very important.
I think we're coming up pretty close here now, the end of our time, but we've spoken a lot in this conversation to leaders and potential leaders in the security space and ways to think about organizing their teams and becoming more effective leaders in this space. But you've sort of mentioned that this is part of an awakening in industry, certainly. Maybe the government is well ahead of this, but an awakening in the industry in this security piece. So do you have any sort of thoughts at the end for companies that maybe haven't yet made this move, either because of feeling uncertain or feeling insecure about going down this route, as to what they should be thinking about and whether or not they should be looking to find a security leader for their org?
Sure. So post-pandemic, the world has forever changed, right? I don't need to persuade anyone about the risks in the area of cybersecurity, what's at stake, understanding your most valuable assets and the best ways to protect them. A chief security officer is really important. And you notice I didn't say a chief information security officer. I said a chief security officer. I think the best organizations understand the nexus of physical security and cybersecurity, that they are forever intertwined now. Everything is digital, the Internet of Things. And so I do believe that Silicon Valley's awakening is because of the new attack surface in cybersecurity, which are private sector organizations, nonprofits, businesses, critical infrastructure, hospitals, casinos, the electric grid, water, transportation sector. With this critical infrastructure, when something goes down in the physical or cyber world, lives can be lost. And so organizations just need to take a risk-informed approach about what really is at risk of loss, and then make their staffing decisions accordingly.
Well said. I love that idea. As we kind of close out here, can you let people know if they'd like to connect with you online or find out more of your thoughts, where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn at Joye Purser, Joye Purser.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. That's going to be it for us today. Thank you to Dr. Purser for being our guest today. Thank you to each of you for listening, and we hope to see you next time. As we close things out here, we'd like to thank our sponsor, This.Labs, one last time, who would like us to let you know that they are trusted by top names like Meta, Google, and T-Mobile. This.Labs helps bridge the gap from business requirements to tech implementation. Whether you're modernizing legacy systems, ensuring sustainable application architecture, or seeking expert guidance, This.Labs has the experience to help. Discover more at this.co. Once again, that's THISDOT.co. Thanks, Dr. Purser. Thanks, everybody else. We'll see you all next time.
Okay, thanks.